Crossfire by Andy McNab, read by Jason Fleming. Tuesday, 27th of February 2007, 0:15 hours, northwest of Basra. The noise and heat, gloom and sheer fucking claustrophobia in the back of the Warrior were oppressive enough. But now the armour was suddenly clanging 3 times a second, like the world's strongest madman was using it for sledgehammer practice. We were taking rounds. It could only mean we were closing in on target. The front end dipped hard. "Fuck!" the Scouse driver screamed over the radio net as he stood on the anchors. "There's a fucking bastard tank!" The commander yelled back so loud I had to lift the PRR pad from my ear. "Go right, you cunt! You'll hit the fucker!" Until a few years ago, the only way troops could communicate with each other was by shouting or hand signals. But every man and his dog now wore a personal roll radio. It had revolutionised the infantry. Just 4 inches by 6, with a headset consisting of an ear pad, Velcro strap and a little boom mic, PRR acted effectively as a secure chat net between troops. The Challenger's thundering growl had come from our left. We took more small arms fire into the hull, and then there was a much louder bang 2 feet from my shoulder. "RPG!" Rocket-propelled grenades could punch holes in concrete walls. I knew it would just bounce off the skirt of bar armour surrounding us, but I still felt like I was trapped in a locked safe while people on the outside were fucking about with blowtorches and gelignite. It was having no control that bothered me. I was at the mercy of the driver, the gunner, and the commander in the turret, a platoon sergeant called Rhett. Our Warrior was part of the battle group's recce platoon. Dom, Pete and I were embedded. Entombed, more like, Pete said. He'd been a tankie himself, once upon a time, and even he didn't like the lid coming down. We were jammed, shoulder to shoulder in the eerie red glow of the night lights. Rhett's scuffed and dusty desert boots were level with my face. The gunner was up there on his left, frantically feeding rounds into the 30mm cannon. The wagon took one final hard right and came to a jarring, gut-wrenching halt. "Dismount! Dismount!" Rhett's shout was drowned by the cannon kicking off above us. The rear door hydraulics whined and I could see stars and hear the roar of gunfire and heavy machinery. The 4 recce guys tumbled out into the inky blackness. Pete shoved a hand over his lens and we followed. Oil wells blazed out of control on the horizon. Gases and crude were being forced out of the ground under phenomenal pressure, shooting flames 100 feet into the air. The night was filled with the thunder of 30mm cannon kicking off across the dried-up wadi bed that separated us from our target, the buildings no more than 100 away. Dom rehearsed a few sound bites to himself as Pete sorted the sound check. "The Kingsmen of the Duke of Lancaster Regiment are halfway through their 6-month tour. They have been shot at 24/7 by small arms, RPGs and mortars. But ask any one of them and they'll tell you it's what they signed up to do." Tonight, they were about to kick the shit out of the insurgents who were within spitting distance of taking over Al-Gunan and starting to claim the ground as their own. They had to be broken. An insurgent stronghold soon became another link in the supply chain from Iran, just 10 clicks away. The Kingsman's mission was to do the breaking, and ours was to report it. Dom talked, Pete filmed him, and I had to make sure the 2 didn't get shot, snatched, or run over by a set of tracks sent screaming across the desert by a bunch of jabbering Scousers. It wasn't easy. When Dom started playing newsman, he seemed to think there was a magic 6-foot force field standing in between him and any incoming fire. Sometimes he thought he didn't even need to wear a helmet. But in this war, the enemy didn't give a shit whether you were a journalist or a soldier. If you were a foreigner, they wanted you out, and preferably in a body bag. If they could get you alive, so much the better. You'd be the new star of the Al Jazeera show, and all you could do was hope your next appearance wouldn't end with them slicing off your head online. The sun had risen enough to chuck out a bit of heat, but not enough to coax me out of my oversized fleece I had on over my body armour. I ran my tongue over my furred-up teeth and gave my greasy, stubbled face a rub. Dom and Pete sat among steel ammo boxes, day sacks and general wagon shit in the idling Warrior. Pete fucked about on his Mac laptop, preparing to send TVZ-24 the latest report from its star correspondent. It was Poland's first 24-hour news channel. Their headquarters were in Krakow, but Dom and Pete worked out the Dublin office. There were better tax breaks in the Republic than in the UK. Dominik Kontratorvich was a bit of a celeb in reporting circles. The golden boy of war journalism with platinum-plated bollocks. He wore a memory stick on a chain round his neck. Maybe it was to ward off evil spirits. He was tall and annoyingly good-looking. His Top Gun-style dark brown hair, blindingly white teeth and firm jawline were featured most weeks in Poland's answer to Hello. As far as I knew, he lived in Dublin, with Siobhan, his Irish wife, and her son Finbar. He kept things close to his chest, did Platinum Bollocks. Pete was getting pissed off with dust billowing off Dom's jacket. "Here, Dracula, you going to take your fucking cloak off or what?" Dom's mother was from Transylvania. Pete obviously thought he'd died and gone to heaven when he found out. Pete pulled a can of compressed air from his bat belt and gave the laptop keys a few bursts. As he treated himself to a blast down the front of his shirt, I spotted a memory stick like Dom's round his neck. I hadn't realised superstition was so rife in this business. Bosnia, Sudan, Afghanistan, Iraq. They'd been there, seen it, done it together, and Pete had filmed Dom wearing the T-shirt. They picked up an Emmy last year for a documentary on women's rights in Afghanistan, almost non-existent under the Taliban, and not much improved apparently under new management. "All set?" Dom closed his eyes and tried to get himself comfortable. Pete tapped away. "On its way." A shaft of early morning light shone through the mortar hatch. "Back in your coffin, Drac." Pete wasn't missing a trick this morning. Dom kept his eyes shut, but couldn't stop a grin. "What now, Pete?" "Tallulah wants me to give Ruby a virtual bollocking." Pete logged on to BT at least once a day and checked his emails. The ones he got from 7-year-old Ruby and her stepmum Tallulah always raised a smile with him. I liked Pete a lot, and it wasn't just because of his accent. The moment I'd heard it, at Amman Airport, I'd known we had a lot more in common than an army past. What we didn't share was his almost obsessive-compulsive approach to organisation. Pete had to be the most fastidious man on the planet. Maybe that wasn't surprising, after being cooped up for the whole of his army career with a crew who farted every 5 minutes and pissed in empty plastic bottles. "Here, Nick. You want to get online before the Prince of Darkness here hogs the fucking thing?" He looked across at Dom and the smile evaporated. Dom seemed to spend longer on the phone and email than a love-struck teenager, to Moira, his producer back in Dublin. "The price of fame." I raised an eyebrow. "Rather him than me," Pete said. "She's an arsehole." It was true. The only decent person I'd spoken to in the whole office was Kate, her PA. He went back to his laptop. It still felt strange to me that they should be able to maintain contact with the outside world and conduct their lives almost normally while sitting in the back of one of these things in the middle of a war zone. It wasn't just the technology that amazed me. It was sustaining the relationship. Dom opened his eyes and reached for a bottle of water. I could almost hear his mind ticking over as he drank.